All right. We got how we doing? We got can y'all all right, can y'all hear me this time? Y'all hear me? How's the audio now? Okay. There we go. There we go. There we go. There we go. Okay, listen. Yeah, I'm not happy. But I got some people who I consider somewhat trustworthy. None of y'all wanted to tell me I went 20 minutes and you couldn't hear me. Bruh, that's ridiculous. I could have just used one comment, just one comment. So how I started off is I got my mic is coming in soon. So any of you that I know none of y'all heard this because the audio wasn't playing last time. So I got a new mic coming in that should make the audio sound a little bit better, assuming I make sure the audio is on. So we got a new mic coming in, and yeah, I'm just excited. We got new 720, quality, which is much better from before. We got pen tool. We got pen tool for y'all. There we go. You can see that. I was going off. I was going off. I was popping off on the last stream. I'm not gonna lie, but it's okay. We'll go back. Go back. I had a good test run, so we'll bring it back for y'all. Any of y'all that are still up, and I'll just probably retweet this in the morning for anybody that missed it and maybe wants to go back. So, uh, we have Fiona right now. It's just it's not a problem for anyone at the moment, but it will be. It's approaching the Leeward Islands. We're at 500 millibars. Damn it! Um, I went through that whole spiel where you guys couldn't hear me, and I explained 500 millibar difference for wintertime and summertime. But I start off at 850. I always start off at 850 for tropical storms because was trying to explain last time. The good news is I got more experience with the pen tool. So we can kind of start fresh here. This is the ocean, right? This is the ocean right here. Tropical storms start at the surface. And the better the outflow, the more these storms are able to intensify. So the more these are able to intensify with the right conditions, if they do intensify, they work from the surface and the spin gets stronger at the surface and it works its way up, up, higher, 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 higher. And then it goes out like this, if that makes sense. It's a little complicated drawing, but that's how tropical systems work, and that's the outflow in the system at the end. So that's why we look at 850 compared to 500, and this will make sense. The spin at 500, I will show you, will be a little bit less. Bang, 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 bang. Nah, you see that now? Spins a little bit less. There's not a stronger vorticity signature, but if we go back to 850, you will see stronger vort signature. That's why I like to look at 850. It's a good indicator for how strong of a system we have and we're dealing with. And plus, P-type maps don't always represent everything. So I mean, we have a pretty strong vort signature for it's about where it should be. It's not ridiculously strong. It's not like I look at this and I say, oh, it should be a hurricane. No, no, it's about where it should be. You see this, it should be around tropical storm strength. This kind of vort signature, it's just about where it is. But we progress this. It's going to head towards the Leeward Islands. There could be some fluctuations in intensity, but I think one thing the GFS struggling with right now is we have. I'll show you relative humidity is we have this dry air. We have this dry air to the north, as you can see. So we have all this dry air, and even no, we want that to be a little bit bigger. We have all this dry air. We have even some here too that's able to work in the core. So this is why you can see all the moisture here on this side because we've seen some westerly shear today. If we back this up, we'll trash that. If we back this up, you can see it's been dealing with westerly shear, and it's going to continue throughout the night to deal with westerly shear. And what shear does, we have a lot of northerly shear too. As you can see, we have this high pressure to the north. That's what's steering it to the west. So we have high pressure up here, and high pressure, low pressure does not like to go at high pressure. It's just how the steering currents work. So it's going to want to push westward until the steering currents change. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. But so as I said, we have this westerly shear right here, and we also with that dry air. And what happens is wind shear is good for transporting dry air into the system's core so that it decouples the low level and the mid level center from each other. So when that happens, it makes it difficult for storms to intensify. Like we've been seeing all today, is the low level center has been exposed and out to the west, whereas the mid level center has been more pushed back to the east because shear has decoupled the core. So if I have we want a stacked system. We want a stacked low level center, mid level center, and for that mid level center is where a lot of the convection gets driven from. And the low level center is the root of the system. It's the core. That's where we look for when we're looking at the strength. That vorticity signature, that 850 volt signature. That's what we're looking at. So if we get shear, and this is our mid level center right here, and this is our low level center, and it decouples it and pushes the mid level center this way, but the low level center is still going to track. It's still going to track this way. Let's just say this is west. Obviously it's not north. It's north to south, but let's just say it's west. If that happens, it's not. Those need to be close or stacked for the storm to be able to intensify the best it can and to be able to get the best outflow it can in the storm. Because remember, we talked about in the beginning, outflow works out like this from the storm. Or, technically it would be like this, the way I drew it, but you get what I'm saying. So as we progress it, we'll notice the dry air starts to fade away on the GFS. One thing I'm a little bit skeptical of with that happening, though, is you can see, and another thing I'm skeptical of as well is this low pressure just being able to go into Hispaniola and intensify 4 millibars. I just don't buy that. I tweeted out time and time. I tweeted out earlier today, time and time again, we see systems like this. That they're intensifying, and then they hit Cuba or Hispaniola, and all of a sudden that just goes south. But not only that's expected, it's expected. These storms don't intensify over land unless it's a brown ocean effect. I believe that's what it's called. That Hispaniola and mountains are not the brown ocean effect. This is not the case. And what tends to happen is it really tends to decouple that mid-level and low level center. So when that happens, I'll address questions. I promise I'll address questions at some point. But I just want to get through the initial thoughts here first. So when we have the mid-level center and the low level center decouple, like I was talking about, elevation tends to drive that and make that process happen. It takes a little bit longer for the storm to restack again its low level and mid level center, and then take off for intensification. And we see it happen often, and models try to strengthen these storms really quickly off its landfall. But it just doesn't always happen like that. It can happen. It can under the right conditions where it doesn't go over a lot of mountains. It's a short period of time over land, and it's able to quickly regain its strength and start to take off again. That's not quite what I think is probably going to happen, though. And that's just another reason why I think a reason for this to come farther west. Initially, I'll get into why we still have no idea where this is going. Once the system starts to work past the Bahamas in terms of latitude, why we still don't have really a lot of idea where this system is going. I got two more points as to why I got problems with the GFS as well, and just models in general. Another one is I saw some stuff on the Twitter sphere earlier today that the actual LLC, the low level center, has actually been running about like 50 plus miles like south of where the National Hurricane Center has been putting the origin of the cone, where it's been putting its track center. That's a red flag to me also. This storm's moving farther south in latitude because it's been decoupled. It's still a 60-mile tropical storm because it's been able to maintain its convection actually pretty decently. It's just displaced from where the centers, which is why we haven't seen any strengthening today. And why also the pressure, it's weird. The pressure went up. Usually you see pressure fall and then simultaneously or shortly after the winds go up. But we saw the pressure go up, which makes sense based on what we saw on satellite. And to go along with that, though, the winds didn't quite match, which was a little surprising. I know I phrased that weird, but I think that made sense. So immediately that makes me think that the models are placing the track of this system how the NHC is seeing it as well, that maybe they're not quite grasping where exactly the center of this system is at origin, which is a concern as well. My next concern with how models are handling this is if I show you the wind shear, to me, I see, the outflow starts to get better as we progress about 4 or 5 days out. The outflow does start to get better, but I still see, we can see the wind shear obviously prevalent with its current state, and it had decent outflow actually, which is why I was able to intensify a little bit yesterday. But then we saw wind shear take place, and that's another thing. How well does it survive this? This is pretty significant. 30-40 knot wind shear right here. That's really close to the center's core, and it's going to be try to work a lot of dry air in. And if I show you, no, take that away. There we go. If I show you relative humidity, notice I play this out. It's dry air starts to fade away more, and the moisture takes over. Even though there's still shear prevalent, moisture is able. We see convection. It's still able to fire up enough convection to fight off that dry air. Just based on, I don't know if it's maybe I'm not seeing something properly. It's possible, but just based on common tropical meteorology knowledge, I'm a little bit better at winter forecasting. I'm not gonna lie. I have more experience. I live in Massachusetts, so I think that makes a little sense why I probably have a little bit more experience with winter forecasting, but I still have a good handle on tropical meteorology. I'm not an expert. I would never call myself an expert. If you're an expert, I think that means you think you know everything. That's just my opinion. But I have a pretty decent handle on how this works, and I'm not sure how it's going to be able to fire up that much convection. Now, shear in the outflow will become a little bit better a couple days from now, but it's still prevalent. If I show you, I mean, it's still got shear. I mean, it's got a little bit of southerly shear, northerly shear as well, and even to its east. I'm not sure that will be able to work its way into it, just based on the outflow. But there's definitely northerly shear present here, and with northerly shear as well, we talked about how shear transports dry air into systems. That's around where the shear was that I was trying to show you. And look what we got here. We got dry air by no surprise. Those two tend to go hand in hand a lot. I don't see how it's going to be able to fight off that shear like that at 10:04, 10:05 bars. And given the other stuff I was talking about too, I have a hard time believing it's going to be able to fight that off. So it wouldn't shock me in the upcoming days. I could see this going. I could see this track working all the way through. No, 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 play. I could realistically see this track going all the way south of even Hispaniola. I could realistically see that happening. It's possible. And then it works its way up something like this. I don't know. I don't know. It's we still have to figure out the steering currents, as I'm going to get into in a second. That's the next major part I'm going to get into. But take a drink from my throat right there. That's just the beginning. This is just the initial part. This is over the next 2 or 3 days. Just figuring out Fiona's intensity. So stronger storms tend to have like to go recurve out to sea quicker. They're able to find the steering currents quicker, um, and the stronger storms tend to want to ride out east first, where slower storms tend to want to ride this westerly track. They become these stronger storms get more influenced by the steering currents, where the weaker ones there's not if they're weak enough they're not really able to be pushed around by the steering currents all that much, which is why you can see that plays a part. Fiona's initial intensity is going to play a pretty significant impact on the storm's track down the road. So I don't think it's going to be able to intensify that much over the next couple of days. It wouldn't shock me if the analysis on the environment over the next couple of days is wrong, or if it's not right based on what models are showing. Um, then that's definitely possible. But based on what models are currently showing, I just don't. I don't see why Fiona is going to be able to intensify a lot, and that's why I'm skeptical that the GFS is even taking this down. Assuming it weakens, I think it could weaken even more actually. Um, I know it went up in winds yesterday and early this morning, but it wouldn't shock me if we saw this go back down to 45, 50 miles per hour even. That would not shock me. But working its way, let's say 1007 pressure, or what was the pressure? I'll figure that out right now. Was internet got 1005. Okay, so it dropped 1 millibar. Staying steady. That's not really a big difference, but I like to know, going up or down. I think just a trajectory. But the fact it went down 1 millibar doesn't really mean anything. It's just staying steady. Um, we can take a look at satellite right now too. See what's going on. So, weather nerds. I like weather nerds. See what's going on. Dang. Yep. So our low level center is probably, somewhere. Where is it? I mean, I don't know if I can maybe see the spin yet. It's probably somewhere in here, if I had to guess, just based on it's hard. We don't have visible satellite right now, so I can't tell exactly. But it's probably somewhere around there, and you can see our convection is placed right now to the east, still firing up convection. We have oh, this is Dmax. So how that works is convection. It's cooler at nighttime, obviously. So convection is easier to fire up at night, where in the atmosphere. Where during the day, it works a little bit differently. So in the day, it's warmer, obviously, than it is at night. So cloud tops are more susceptible to warm a little bit more than it is just at night, which we call D-min, the max point is at night, where the minimum point is in during the day. And so it's not surprising that's still firing up convection, um, which is still very displaced. So probably be a flooding threat for the Leeward Islands and Puerto Rico, obviously, as well, as the storm's still going to be working west. But that's if Puerto Rico may not have a significant impact if the storm continues to work, stays decoupled and works west southwest. It may not be able to do that. Hmm. How's the frame rate? Okay, frame rate's not perfect. I have 30 FPS is my frame rate, so it's not bad. It's not bad. Just curious. Because I didn't want to pay for the full thing. I want to upgrade and give you guys a better content experience, but I didn't want to, I didn't want to spend really a ton of money. Uh, you know, money's important. When you get older, you figure that out. But we'll slide back. Here we go. So now, yeah. Actually, let's line that up. Let's see with how much moisture. Not bad. Yeah, the lines up pretty well. So now we're going to take a look at 500 millibars. So remember, I talked about 500 millibars is not really the strongest point of vorticity in a tropical storm. 500 millibars I use more for the upper air, and 500 millibars we're going to look at 500 millibars in the wintertime exclusively. Exclusively, you will see 500 millibars more than you will P-type maps from me. I promise you that. I promise you that during the winter. And why? And we'll even hopefully some more frames filled in from last time. It's not great. So I'll go back to the 18Z again because it's just upper air stuff we're still trying to figure out. What we got going on here? We have a system. This big old boy right here. This big old boy right there. That is a really, it's broad. It's broad for the latitude. Usually what happens is this is the exit region for storms in our latitude. So what happens is they start to intensify, may not be able to get its act together, and they really take off up here. Or they takes off in our region, we get our big snowstorm, and it kind of stays pat, and it's still a really strong storm, just not without all it's just a little bit less convection, but it's still a really impressive extratropical storm. Now that I've established that, this is also a really complicated one. I'll look at all the origins. This is the main one, obviously, right here. But, 1, 2, 3, and then it just keeps injecting. If I show you this loop here, just keeps injecting, right in a line. You see another one here, and it just keeps injecting these. And this slowly, we just see these partial phases take place, trying to come together. But there's so much going on that it can't even really get its act together. And how this plays a part is we have troughs behind it. And if you guys know from the wintertime, I talked about this before. For any of you that remember, possibly, there's not a lot on here because it's late. It's understandable, but I'll retweet this again in the morning, so people that may have missed it last night, because nothing in terms, especially this stuff, nothing is really going to change in terms of my thoughts. Maybe it might change on the models, but in terms of the thoughts themselves, they're going to stay the same in terms of what I was talking about, and we'll be able to line those up the closer we get, and see how accurate a couple of my predictions are so far. But every trough affects the next trough is what I was going into. So we have this one here, but we also had the old typhoon, which I think is, now this piece of energy. So I'm going to play it back, bang, 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 go back. So we have this typhoon. We'll erase some of that stuff. Old typhoon right here. I forget the name of it. I can't remember the name of it. Sorry, guys. But that was an old typhoon working away. What's going to happen here is it's going to shoot off a piece of energy, just like we would see in the wintertime, into Alaska. It's going to shoot this down into here, or it might be a little bit more north even. I think it might be here, but you'll watch that. You'll see that, boom, slingshots it, and then we start to see the development of our trough. We have this big, we have this trough right here too. It's kind of more, this is more looks like cutoff low, honestly. But yeah, right here. So it looks like maybe another rainy Sunday for Trey Lance again. Oof. Oof. I don't know if any of you follow football or not, but that's just my interest. If you guys didn't see it last week, the Bears and the 49ers played a football game, and it was absolutely pouring rain in Chicago. And they had just this big band of rain that was sitting over them. The field was just a mess. It was just, I just imagine, kids playing in the puddles. That's just what it looked like. Um, but I got off topic. Hold up, let me get back. And so how this relates is this is probably actually how connected those two are could play a big part in how yeah, actually, not looking at, we're putting pieces together on the fly here even, so we can see there's a little bit of a connection between these two. There's a little bit of stream interaction right there is the proper word for it. So I guess how much this is able to pull will affect probably the depth of this trough, which is important, and also the strength of the trough, which those two are very similar and connected. Are we looking at how broad of a trough and the depth of the trough? Those are both connected. How deep the trough goes versus how broad it is, how tightly wound up, that will all play a part. And I'm walking you through it very slowly. We're kind of setting the basis for what I'm going to be talking about a lot in these streams this year, especially for winter time. But this is all connected. I'm going to show you why. And when I show you, it's going to connect the pieces together. I talked about this on Twitter, but sometimes it's harder to on Twitter because I can't talk and explain my every thought when I'm tweeting something out. I only get like 240 characters a tweet. Used to be 140, so I'm happy about that now. But if I play this out, every trough affects the next trough. So if we have a really strong trough initially, don't focus on this right now, but just my drawing. We have a really strong dip. We have a really strong trough. That's a beautiful trough for a snowstorm, by the way. Beautiful trough. We're going to have the ridge, obviously. So we're going to have, this is our ridge. And then behind that will be another trough. That's typically what it looked like. But notice the trough behind it, it's going to be a little bit weaker if this is really going to strengthen. Because now this ridge is going to build. This ridge is going to build out. And it's not going to allow the depth in this trough to get as deep as we want it to. If we're looking at, the system after that. So how that relates is the stronger this, complex, I mean, this is a complex stream interaction. The stronger this bad boy gets right here, and look at it, it's still, it's happening right now. The storm is, and we still can't figure out how strong models can. We're not going to try to because it's not really going to affect us, and it's not being talked about because it's not in our region. It's not in our latitude, obviously. But how strong this system gets is going to affect the ridging behind it, and then the depth of the trough of the next one. And as we play that out, you'll see what I'm talking about. So we have our trough right here. I'm going to say overuse trough a lot. We have it here. We have our vort signature right here. And then we have the ridge building in behind it. And then we have a ridge to the east as well. Back out here. It'll be easier to show. Obviously. Yep. And how quickly that's able to work. I guess, it's... Yeah, okay. And what we talked about in the beginning was steering currents. High pressure. High pressure are the steering currents for our storms. So if I get this back to 500 millibar height anomalies, now this is gonna come into play. Now you're gonna understand. So how if this trough is weaker, then there's a good chance the height, you know, this is this is our ridge right in here. This is our ridge, this big old orange blob right here. That's our ridge. How strong these heights are able to build here, especially here, especially how strong these heights are going to be able to build over here. I know I'm scribbling a mess, but just follow along. That's going to define where this is going to go. And this is Fiona at this point, way down the line. Don't focus on the strength at all or location even. This is just per this example. This is going to force a scenario where this is going to have to push west here a little bit more and not even be able to go that fast in a situation like this. This is where Fiona is going to have to get strong enough. It's going to, until it gets strong enough, it's going to move slowly, and until it's strong enough, then it will break through that ridge if it gets strong enough. And it's going to wait, and if it doesn't, then it just fizzles out. If the atmospheric conditions aren't right for it to intensify. But looking down the road, I think conditions are going to be pretty favorable at some point for Fiona. I think it's going to strengthen a lot at some point. At some point, I don't know when, but with this big dome of high pressure, and that's the way. It's a classic high pressure setup in this specific image. At some point, where high pressure is going to build over regardless. You know, if I show you the difference between runs. Let's go here, North Atlantic. You know, high pressure is going to build in regardless. 0Z, you can see there's still a dome of high pressure. So even if it goes into the Gulf of Mexico or even more out to sea, there's a dome of high pressure there. And with that, below that, there's not going to be a ton of wind shear in this general area at this point. It looks like models have all come to agree on that. And obviously that can change a little bit, obviously, because we're over a week out from this point. But at some point, I think Fiona is going to be able to intensify a good amount. And models have all come to agree on that pretty well, I think. That's something we can agree on in the medium range, that Fiona has a good chance to intensify at some point. Hold on. Let me take another sip. And with it, and that is why models showing it being able to intensify, that's why this has people's attention. If it was just a weak, tropical system, this wouldn't have people's attention. The fact that it's showing strong solutions hitting U.S. locations, that's why this has people's interests. And that's why I'm talking about it right now, actually. And now I'm going to connect the pieces. Remember I was talking about, this is, you can see it here on 500 millibar. You can see all these different, all these different points right here of sinking pressure points. I think I said that right. There's just so many different pieces right there. And then we got high pressure that builds in behind it. Then I can play this in. That ridge kind of sits, but it's going to break eventually. And we have this next piece with, it's almost identical with high pressure building in. If this stays the case, we're probably going to see some pretty warm temperatures across the Midwest next week. It's probably going to be pretty hot in the Midwest next week, if I had to guess. It's probably going to be pretty hot. Yeah, I think next week could be pretty hot. That will be something to watch. And again, that actually goes back, how the depth of the trough. I know I'm scribbling a lot, but if you just follow along, depth of the trough, that affects, where the dome of high pressure builds in. Depending on the strength of the high pressure, that will be able to control where it goes. So this is why I was talking about all those moving parts, because they're important. They're really important, and that's why we don't have a freaking clue of where this thing's going beyond like day 4 or 5, and even really we don't have an idea over the next few days. We're still trying to figure out the current center. I mean, we can see it on low level satellite, but the National Hurricane Center isn't exactly pinpointing it um, based on where a lot of people think it should be. Now, frankly, a lot of times out of 10, I would go with the National Hurricane Center, but there are some smart people on Twitter, believe it or not. Not me. I'm just I'm just an old Joe that did a little research. But there's a lot going on in this upper air pattern. There's a lot going on, and I don't think this will be my last stream. I think this is something we're going to be talking about for a little while at least. So I think this is has the potential to be a U.S. threat based on a lot of stuff I was talking about in the beginning. That leads me to believe that this thing's gonna not have a lot of problem just gliding west and staying out of the problems of the steering currents. But at the same time, there's just so much. This is a really volatile setup, and there's just so much going on that I think it's still pretty hard to say where exactly this system is going to go. So I know I didn't give you a ton of answers, but I gave you a lot of different scenarios and things to look for over the next few days. Actually, I gave you a couple of my thoughts. If I was a betting man, I would say this is going to continue to head west. If I was a really betting man, I'd say this has a shot of heading. This is probably going to head west of Eastern Hispaniola. Even I don't think I would say this heads west of Puerto Rico, and that's where I think this is heading. Yeah, yeah, bro. I'm so excited for this. I built up a following over the past couple of years. Um, some credibility. Um, really, it just started. I wasn't really looking to gain much. I was just trying to learn. In the process, and I've learned a lot, and I've been able to give a lot of information. To people. Landfall in New England. Yep. Bookmark it. Big time. Cat 5. New England. No, I'm just kidding. I don't think we can put a destination on landfall yet. I think we're still way too far away. Way too far away. I wish I could give you an answer. I really wish I could. But I tweeted out earlier today. I had a pretty good message that it seems like a good amount of people saw. No, not the one. That was old account. I actually will delete that right now. That we'll go over that. We'll go over that soon when it comes winter time. Um, yeah, this was it. Yeah, I think this was a good way of putting it. I think this was a really good way of putting it. Um, actually, let me retweet the stream because this is the part really people like to come in at. They like the questions. They want to interact. I didn't do a lot of interactions. That'll be easier to do. This one's hard to do interactions when I'm breaking down the whole freaking setup. When I have to break down the whole setup, it's a little bit harder. So once I establish the parameters, what we're dealing with, it's a little bit easier to go through questions and stuff. This was a good, but where's the tweet? For any of you maybe just joining, we're going through questions, and stuff. If you have questions about the system, feel free to put them away. But I'm just trying to show up. Someone, brought up, do we know where this is going to landfall yet? We don't. But I think this is a good way of putting it. It's safe to monitor. It's good to monitor at this point. Um, and have your hurricane prep plan. Have it in place. You should already have an idea of your hurricane prep plan. You should know what you need to buy when that time comes. I think when you get into the cone, I think that is a good point where you start putting your plan into place. That is when you should start doing that. Um, not 10 days out when we have no idea what's going to happen. Not know the stuff. Know how close do you live to the ocean. That's important for storm surge. If you live close to the ocean, then you might want to take some extra steps. You know, Typically before the season, you have sandbags and stuff that if the time comes, you need to use those. So I would just I don't know. There's a lot of people like to hype these up. They'll post one model run of a 950 millibar storm off Cape Hatteras. Okay, well that model has certain physics that happen to put it in that certain position at that time, and those physics change depending on the environment. I mean, the physics of the model are going to stay the same depending on the environment it's given, but those physics are different in every model. Like, not a lot of people understand that. Like, models aren't just like different origins. Like, they're not just different parts of the country. Is the model? Like, models aren't. They don't have a personality. They're just physics. People made physics for these models to use, and then the models just got to figure it out for themselves. They don't like have any common sense whatsoever. Like, they're just physics. It's math. That's all it is. These models are doing equations and then printing a picture. That's how this works. And they change every 6 hours. So people get caught up in the every 6 hour run. And then what happens is 6 hours later, it changes again. People think that we live in such a small, like, look how small. This is like the highest populated area in the country. It's like 50 million plus people who live here. 50 million people. And we're trying to figure out what this thing is going to do with this big of an area. That's the whole United States. But we're so obsessed with the 20-mile shifts that in the grand scheme of things, it's really not that big of a deal. It's really not that big of a deal. People go, oh, it changed. The rain snow line moved 25 miles this run 3 days out. I hate to break it to you. A, you shouldn't be looking at the P-type map. And B, the 500 millibar is where you should be looking at, and that tells you any changes. And there's a good chance if it only shifted 25 miles, not a lot changed. That's the same with, I think, tropical systems. These are way more volatile. So where changes that happen, in the short term are really going to affect the long term a lot with the track of tropical systems. So one run, we see it. That's why we see so many times, like 7 days out, one run goes like here, and then another one goes like out here. It's ridiculously difficult to predict. We're predicting the future. It's hard. It's hard to do. It's hard to do. But what do I know? Just a person. Just a person. That's all I am. Who likes to draw? Who likes to draw? That's what I'm really good at. No, I'm just kidding. I'm a decent artist. Not bad, not bad. I am. I mean, again, I talked about this earlier. Like, we don't know if it's a fish storm. We don't know. We don't know. We can try to figure it out, but we don't know. I laid out all the pieces. If you just came in, you can look back. I'm going to be ending the stream pretty shortly, because it's almost 2 o'clock. So, but you'll be able to see pretty shortly. I went through it all. I went through the short term. what's happening with Fiona right now. I went through the long term with the 500 millibar pattern. Uh, there's a lot going on, and it's too early to figure out U.S. impacts. I said if I was a betting man, I would bet on this. Um, you know, based on what the GFS was trying to advertise in terms of its track and what the environment said. I think it's I think there's a good shot this stays south and heads west to Puerto Rico, south and west of Puerto Rico, and I think this might even head south and west of Hispaniola, Eastern Hispaniola as well. That was that's my gut based on what I see in the environment right now. I think it's trying to advertise a lot of convection and moisture to wrap around the whole system and prevent it from being vulnerable to shear. And there is shear present around the environment, so I think that's a concern for me. That's a concern for me for Fiona to strengthen or just even maintain intensity like it's shown. That's a concern. So I would lean with some of the Western lean tracks, but at the same time, when I say that, like that matters for tracking, and that puts the U.S. a little bit more susceptible to being hit. But at the same time, I explained went through all the 500 millibar stuff in terms of the upper air patterns that like we really still don't have a good idea of who's going to get this storm or where it's going to track or if it hits anybody. Like there's still way too much to be figured out. I think someone put South Florida. There is a shot. There is a shot. I think with South Florida track, that would have to trek through the high elevation of Hispaniola, and as I talked about earlier in the stream, that means it's got to go through. It's got to go through a lot of land, a lot of elevation, and models like to intensify that a little bit quicker than how it usually happens. So that would be the good news if it were to be a South Florida, like a dead South Florida. If it comes in on the southeast side, that means uh, that if it comes in on the southeast side, that means there's probably a ridge building to its east. Kind of like what we see on the image here. I think I chose 18Z. Don't even bother. If someone came in, they would just call me a weenie right now. But if you've been here, you know what I'm talking about right now. This actually plays it out well. I'll show you. How South Florida could get a hit. What would need to happen is we have this ridge right here, and we have this here. I want to get this ridge would need to extend a bit more here, and this ridge would have to push in a little bit more here, which is why the depth of this trough matters. I don't know why it keeps shrinking like that on me. That's why it matters. That's why that matters. And that's why it's still going to take a little bit of time to figure that out. That stuff's still in Alaska. Still in Alaska right now. I mean, it's not even onshore Alaska. Like it's in the islands of Alaska right now. So that's how you can force a Florida hit. But at some point, basically what happens is this high pressure state. Oh my God, why is this keep? Right, get this crap out of here. If you have high pressure here in a storm that wants to head here, the steering currents are going to stall out probably just a little bit, assuming we have this high pressure here as well and building overhead like this. That means the steering currents are going to give out a little bit. So we're probably in a scenario. This is another possible scenario that I'm laying out down the road. This happens. Just know that I told you how we got there. That means that this slowed down. Kind of imagine like Dorian. Don't imagine Dorian 185 mile per hour. Imagine the track slowed down, and then eventually got to the point and location where was able to get the environment changes. Obviously, high pressure ridges move, and this Doran was strong enough where it's able to bust its way wherever it wanted to go. It was a little bit different environment, but imagine something that was imagine a strong hurricane. It's going to be able to make its way because remember what I talked about in the beginning. Hurricanes start. This is the ocean. They start at the surface, and the stronger and the better the outflow they go, they work their way up higher and higher in the atmosphere. Right? This is a convective circle of clouds. It's really all it is. So the higher it works its way in the atmosphere, the more influence it's going to have at 500 millibars in the steering currents. The more influence it's going to have. So a storm that strong is going to be able to push its way through a ridge, like a ridge that doesn't mean business is going to be able to push its way through that easily. So it's going to slow down a bit in speed, and then eventually it'll be able to work its way through a ridge like that. And that's what we've seen in a lot of these model runs that are shown advertised US hits. They get like here, storm busts to the ridge, and then it kind of heads like this, and it heads out. And because the steering currents open up, you can see it in this picture where it opens up. There, this is the path for the storm to head out. This ridge will not can't be as deep. It'll have to extend out a little bit more in order for this to be a true landfall in here and go in. And based on what models are advertising, again, a lot of changes can happen. That's going to be hard to do. That is going to be pretty hard to do. So I don't think we see, at this point, it's hard to envision seeing a system that makes a really, really true landfall and comes inland. If there were to be U.S. impacts, I would say the heaviest chances of that would be a scraper. Again, though, it's a pretty volatile setup, and a lot of changes are going to happen. Like we're not even close to figuring out U.S. impacts yet. We're trying to figure out if there's going to be Hispaniola and Puerto Rico impacts. That's what we're still trying to figure out. But yeah, I think it just about does it. If you have any last questions, I'll answer them. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for this new setup I got. Again, if you missed it, I got a new mic coming in, so the audio is going to get clearer. I've got the pen tool, obviously, as you've seen. We went from 144. I'll show you the difference. If I go back, look at this. It was probably 144, 720-ish. I mean, look at the difference. I'm really excited. Much improved quality we got going on here now. Much improved quality. Really pumps me up because wintertime, some of you may be new or came in at the end of winter. I don't know, but or just are tropical people. Never seen my page before for winter. It gets busting. It is busting when there's a big time storm, because a lot of people live in the Northeast and they want information. They want information. They're looking for people to tell them stuff. So when those models come out, oh boy, does Twitter get rolling. So I gotta make sure I gotta step up my game a little bit this year, without having to step up, without having to go too deep into the paycheck, obviously. So I'm excited. We're gonna keep doing streams, probably most of them at night. When I can do them during the day, I will try to. But obviously, I'm busy. I have stuff going on during the day. So, in the evening, a lot of times too. You probably won't see a lot of streams from me in the 5 to 8 to 9 p.m. range. Probably won't be a ton of those this year. Most of them will probably be, we'll get an hour earlier. So we'll probably do a lot of, we'll stream a lot of 0Z runs this year. We'll do so. That'll probably be a lot of 11. So weekends for younger kids definitely be doable, but also during the day when I can. We'll try to do. I'll be able to do more days. My schedule allows me from this year compared to last year to do probably more day streams when I have a quiet enough space to do that. I'll be able to do more of those, which is exciting. I just there's a lot. We should be able. Last winter, it's not really about the followers, but I do notice because I get a notification every time someone follows me. Um, we went from I think less than 2,000, maybe 1,500, 1,700, maybe 1,800. I don't forget. To now over 4,500, near 4,600. And we kind of just I was busy over the summer, so we stayed pretty static. I didn't have a problem. The weather was boring. I didn't have a lot to. There was nothing really to track this summer, so I didn't have a problem really with that. It's not really about every statistic of a follower. It's really about the interactions I have with you guys, and me learning more about one of my passions and being able to share that out with you. I'm able to take in this information pretty well, I think. Um, I'm just able to get it out to y'all. Happy to do that for sure. So if you don't have any last questions, I'm probably gonna hop off here any second. Um, but I'll wait like 10 more seconds, 15 more seconds. If you guys got more questions, I'll answer them for sure. But I just want to get that first stream out of the way. With the new setup, we'll get Mike. Mike will be coming in, so audio will be really nice, or at least improved. That's if I click the right button. Nothing. All right. All right. Well, hopefully, I know there's only a couple people in here now, but hopefully, y'all have a good night. And again, I'm gonna retweet this in the morning for some people that may have missed a lot of this, or um, for some that will want to see it in the morning. But other than that, I think that's just gonna about do it. So I'll probably, if there's anything interesting in the Euro, I might tweet something out. But you probably won't see much from me other than just comments. I'll be around on Twitter if you have questions as well with the setup. So, but I'm glad to get the first stream out. First stream with the new setup. I'm really pumped. Again, I'm really pumped. I'm really pumped for this new setup. Thank you. But I just, from where this started and where my level of knowledge started and whether to where we are now, it's really refreshing. To hopefully give you guys better content for y'all to use. So again, hopefully y'all have a good night, and we'll try to do more streams this weekend and next week. Yeah.